Okay, so we're going to wrap up the next lashon of tefillah as we conclude the week, and this is the lashon of tefillah called pigia, relentlessly davening to Hashem. And yesterday, Rosh Hashanah actually taught us how to just daven. And he taught us the mindset that every tefillah that we have, whether it's via this form of pigia or whether just it's in general, you don't daven for that shidduch, for that job, for that health, but rather you always daven with the eitzah that Rosh Hashanah has taught us, Kiratzain Hashem b'shvilai. I really, really want this, and I, in my feeble mind, thinks this is the way it must be. But of course, we always end off with that caveat that maybe... Okay, let's try to continue. But says Rosh Hashanah that we have to be careful of something whenever we come to daven. And that is a line that he quotes in Gemara in Brachos, which is, Chavrusa klape shemaya mi'ika. Are you a friend of Hashem's? As we quoted yesterday or the day before from Cheni Amagil, there are certain ways you just can't talk to Hashem. And you can't talk to Hashem in a certain manner. Chavrusa klape shemaya. So when we're coming to daven, and maybe if you're coming to beseech and beg and push, but it could come to the point that we might cross that line. We may cross the line that instead of just davening, instead of just beseeching, we may lose that cognizance that we're talking to the Creator, we're talking to God. We can't say, you must. You know, sometimes a child will turn to a parent and talk that way. You need to do this. And the parent might tell the kid, you can't talk that way. So we, in a similar vein, have to realize we can't talk to Hashem that way. And Chavrusa Klape Shemaya Mi'ika. And Rav Pinkus concludes this section with contrasting the tefillah of Moshe Rabbeinu and Menashe. Now Menashe did incredible tshuva. And when Menashe did tshuva, his tefillah was accepted. So Rav Pinkus introduces and says, I can't really be one to question Menashe's tefillah. Why can't I question it? Because Hashem accepted his tefillah. But if we look at the way that Menashe davened, we look at the way that Moshe Rabbeinu davened, we see a stark contrast. The Menashe davens to Hashem, a tefillah neira, until it says it was chatar, it was dug out from under the kisei hakavod. An entrance was made into Shamayim for Menashe, which didn't exist. And of course, this is an incredible precursor for tshuva. No one could have been worse than Menashe, Melech Menashe, the terrible aveirus that he did, and yet, when he came back to Hashem with absolute sincerity, Hashem went and dug a path for him under the kisei hakavod. But what was the tefillah of Menashe? The tefillah of Menashe was, Im ya'anini mutav. Hashem, if you answer me, great. V'im lav kol afaya shavin. Then all avenues are equal. Meaning, then he's saying that the tefillah to Hashem is kaviyachal, the same as his prayers to his idols. Now that line, that's a disgusting line. You talk to Hashem that way? Yet on the other hand, how did Moshe Rabbeinu daven? Moshe Rabbeinu davened 515 tefillahs, kiminyan ve'eschanan. And yet, what did Moshe Rabbeinu conclude? He concluded, Hatzur tamim pa'aloi. That Lamais Hashem, if you don't answer me, your ways are perfect. So Rav Shimshon Pincus concludes that of course we should daven and beseech, and the limitless end, there's no end to whatever Hashem could give us. But we just have to remember that there's an appropriate way to daven. And maybe sometimes we'll even get what we want, but it's not through the appropriate avenues. So when we come to daven and we realize and we remember the eitzah that he taught us, that we daven with the caveat that Hashem, you know what's best. And we could beseech and we could cry and we could plead and we could push. But we have to also ultimately remember that Hashem is not our friend. We might be able to have the schos to say, Baruch atah to Hashem. He allows us to approach Him in the first person. He allows us to talk to Him and converse with Him like a friend. But the ultimate kavod is always necessary.